Scaling a law firm isn't about getting more clients, it's about building and inspiring a team. Welcome to the Lawyer Millionaire, helping law firm owners scale profitably, escape the daily grind, and turn their firm into a wealth building asset. Hiring is one of the biggest challenges law firm owners face. And second is delegation. Today's guest shares how data, structure, and an inspiring vision helped him solve both and take his firm from solo to scale in less than 10 years. Today's guest is Eric Toscano, the founder and CEO of Tenant Law Group in California, one of the fastest growing law firms in the United States, having appeared on the Inc. 5000 list multiple times. All right, Eric, it's so great to be with you here today. When I met you in San Francisco, I said to myself, we've got to have this guy on the show and hear some of his insights. I want to dive into one controversial question before and get your take on this before we kind of get into you and your journey. You know, it's been all over the news in the legal world, KPMG's recent move into the legal industry, trying to compete with traditional law firm owners. Some see this as the beginning of the end for mid-size and boutique firms. Others think it's just hype. As the founder of a rapidly growing niche firm, what do you see? Do you see this as a threat, an opportunity, just another corporate overreach? What's your take?
I see any disruption as an opportunity. I know there's opportunities in there. And candidly, in some ways, I think it would be better for the consumer, for the lawyers, because at least in California, it's crazy. The State Bar Act, I was reviewing this recently. It's outdated, and I don't think this is what was intended, but the letter of the law actually says that to be an officer of a professional corporation in California, you have to be an active licensed member, which can't make sense to me because is the State Bar really expecting that law firms in California have their CFO have to have gone through law school? Like that is the qualification for being a functional CFO or chief people officer or chief operating officer? Like that cannot be the case. The point being, bringing experts outside, and there's no reason why you can't bring those experts in right now, but non-lawyer ownership, I don't know. I think my take is I'm a realist, and the State Bar, let's be real what it is. It's a monopoly. It's a guild. It's going to protect its own members. And I don't know what ended up happening, the conversations that went on. I realize that we're in a state that hosts Silicon Valley and a lot of VC. But I don't know. I just don't know. I mean, like the State Bar is made up of its members and the members want to maintain that monopoly. So do I think it's better for consumers to have non-lawyer ownership? I think it probably is going to be better in the long term for consumers. Is it inevitable in California? I don't know. I kind of think that like as California and New York go, so go the rest of the states. So I'm not sure. It's interesting. So I'm watching with keen interest. I also do think that there are probably some opportunities out there currently. Like I know that hospitals and nurses and doctors who own their own firms also have the support of, they're subject to the same licensing requirements for ownership as I am as an attorney, yet there are ways that private money is going into those firms. So I'm not an expert in that area, but I'm very curious about learning more. So I'm watching it with a lot of interest. And I don't know that directly answers everything. I don't claim to be an expert in that area, but I'm just patiently observing and trying to make sure I'm a couple steps ahead and ready for whatever may happen either way.
Yeah. You know, I don't think it's I get the fear around it. I don't think it has to be as scary. There's always been competition. There's always going to be competition. And with you, you've kind of grown into that corporate structure, scaling and growing your law firm. So I want to ask you about that. You know, Tenant Law Group has been ranked among the fastest growing private companies in the US multiple times. To what do you owe this level of growth?
It's an interesting question. I think a lot of it, I think it's a lot of factors, but I will say, I think it does ultimately start and end with the vision of the owner. And for me, what has been a motivating factor has changed over the years. And I've said this repeatedly, you know, so January of 2016, I'm just out on my own. My motivating factor to build something that was sustainable was a 6-month-old, a partner who wasn't working at the time, and some debt from having just recently exited a partnership. That was my why at the beginning. Okay. And but I had at that moment joined an organization of lawyer entrepreneurs, and you'd mentioned earlier that you've interviewed other members of how to manage a small law firm, and the ethos. I mean, it's just the culture there is about growth and all the benefits that come along with it. So from day one, like literally, I joined this organization January of 2016, the same month I launched my firm, and I'm constantly surrounding myself with other entrepreneurs and seeing how much better life can be than the hustle market sell that you kind of have to be doing for that first 0 to, I don't know, arguably, there's certainly the first 0 to 250K in revenue. And that I was doing for that first year. But over time, I wasn't even exclusively a tenant rights firm when I first started out. I was doing different practice area. And when I made the decision to focus on this one niche practice area and do this one thing, but do it really well, it was 2017. I realized the scope of the opportunity because there weren't many law firms out there. There still aren't that many law firms out there doing the kinds of services that we do, which are contingency work on behalf of tenants who've suffered either an economic or bodily, physical, mental, emotional injury. There's 17 million tenants in California, 17 million.
Yeah.
And, it's funny. I get the questions like, so when are you going to expand to other states? I was like, dude, when we've exhausted 17 million is when we're going to, maybe, I have my eyes designs on New York. I think that would be another great place to expand to. We already have a couple lawyers in our firm who are licensed in New York. I'd have to sit for the New York bar, which would be interesting at my age and having been out as long as I have been. But so I would say, succinctly, the opportunity, my interest in growth and all, on all definitions of that word, what it means, having grown my business, what it means in terms of opportunities, economic for my team members, for my family, and, the ability to serve and make a bigger impact because, I think we as entrepreneurs at some point reach a level where we have a lot of our needs met, but that's not really what drives me anymore. For me, it's about providing more opportunities for my team at this point and serving more of the population that needs this service. There's just too many people out there that are experiencing slum-like conditions. So,
yeah, California for tenants, huge. New York, not all states probably have the same opportunity, but definitely you're in the right spot. So, and it's interesting to hear you say that that your motivation evolves, right? A lot of people are motivated by growing the organization and the mission that the organization has. And it becomes less about your own personal needs and more about this thing that you're building. So you've found that to be the case for you.
Yeah. I would say I try to take a good hard look at least once a year. I now have like a planning system in place quarterly where I'm looking out ahead a year and a half. And I'm always thinking a year and a half to 2 years. I have my longer term plans, but I literally have a calendar mapped out. What am I going to be doing on a day-to-day basis for the next 18 months? Always looking ahead at a minimum a year, but that's kind of the range I'm looking at. But making sure that my why is evolving with like what's going on in my life and that it's actually meaningful enough because, you've interviewed, I'm sure, enough entrepreneurs to know that if you lose the fire, that's everything, right? If you get complacent, if you get lazy, if you get satisfied. So I've tried to make myself aware of that and tried to continually, challenge myself. Like this thing that motivated me 2 years ago, it's not really there anymore. Whatever I wanted to hit this milestone for some reason, just for whatever. And now it becomes a little bit more about, like I said, it's the opportunity for people. For me, it's leaving my mark. And not for nothing, like my birthday, I'm going to be 48 this year. I was fortunate to have two grandparents around, one till 98, one till 93. So I was like, okay, probably around the halfway point, knock on wood, if I, stay healthy. And, it's never too early to start thinking about what kind of legacy you want to leave, right? In terms of how you'll be remembered. And, it's a way to, positively impact a lot of people. I always tell solo attorneys, there's absolutely nothing wrong. And I have, huge respect for, half the lawyers in the US are solos. I forget what the statistic is. And that's fine. But for me personally, when Tenant Law Group was Eric and a remote assistant, I have 20 hours a week to give to California tenants. Right. It's not a lot. I'm limited to a fairly small number of people that I can help. And when you're able to leverage, a team, and not just lawyers, but support staff that can take the place and make those lawyers, have the same level of efficiency as, 3 solos with no support staff, you can make a much bigger difference. I'm speaking in the abstract. Of course, those aren't measurable statistics, but the idea is, true.
Yeah, no, it's such a great point. So many people stay stuck at that stage of no one can do it as good as me, but you're one person. And if you really want to have an impact, you have to leverage other people. You have limited time, right? You might be the world's best expert, but even so, you're only one person, right? So you've got to bring those other people in. It sounds like you were able to overcome that. Did you ever feel that way initially, or was that never a concern for you, that the challenge of delegating and allowing others to take over the legal work?
I'm as much a perfectionist as the next lawyer. So, I think that's a trait a lot of us share. It was one of the hardest things to do, is to relinquish control, because at some point, and this is the truth to lawyers that ask me, like I don't want to sugarcoat it. I'll just be honest with you. You are going to mess up your first hire. You're going to make some you're going to make some mistakes, that you're going to make the best decisions you can at the time with the information you have. And, don't be too hard on yourself, but looking back, you're going to make some bad mistakes, some really bad mistakes. You're going to mishire. You're going to hire the wrong people. You're not going to set them up for success. You're going to probably have some difficult separations along the way. It's just going to happen. And you know what? And what also is true is that you'll never get beyond the hustle market sell phase. You'll never be able to make a bigger impact if you don't go down that path. And I will say that, the hiring and the relationships, including those that are, that we've parted ways over time, that's really, I think, what's been the biggest for me, what's made me feel like I've grown the most as a business owner, is being able, there's no right way. Everyone kind of has their own method for hiring, retaining, coaching, managing, supervising. But it's been great, because those are skills that when you're more successful at applying them internally, they benefit you in other areas of your life. So, for example, outside of work, I'm a Cub master. I'm very involved in my son's Cub scouting. Those are kindergarten through fifth grade, and wrangling, parents that have their own, expectations of what's going to happen for their kids, and, managing a bunch of kids bouncing around. I take some of my supervisory and organization skills as a CEO, and I apply them, and it's worked out very well, and it's been a great fit. I love the organization, so it's worked out well there. My family, raising my kids, I'm helping to organize a class reunion. I'm applying a lot of these sort of delegation and management skills, so that they help in all areas of life. But yes, it was hard for me to starting out, and I made a lot of mistakes, but I'm pretty open to that. And I don't BS, and I don't try to sugarcoat it when I'm really looking back and trying to be honest with myself, or, advising or talking about it with other attorneys that are at different points along the journey.
Right. And the team is going to mess up. They're going to make mistakes. You got to be ready for that. And you got to be willing for them to mess up, because that's part of the journey.
And I would say not just that, but I think because absolutely that there will be mistakes. And if your fear, the only way to guarantee that no mistake will ever happen by someone else is not to ever delegate anything. So you don't really get beyond being a solo, right? So It's just going to happen. And it was so funny, because I was actually having a conversation with our managing attorney earlier today. I was talking about it, and it was like, it's surprising to me about the things that freaked me out in January of 2016. My biggest fear at the time, you know what it was? I think it was getting a 1-star review. Oh my gosh. Can you imagine if someone gave me a negative online review? That would shatter my world.
Right.
The skies would fall. And it's so funny. And I'm like, oh yeah, boy, I wish that was I would pray for that to be the worst thing that happens this week, It's just a different place. But sorry, I was going off on a little bit of a tangent, but
no, that's good. That evolves. Your worst fear evolves. As my business has grown, the worst fear would be something like that, or would be losing a client, right? Now that happens, and it's concerning perhaps, but you're more concerned about the team, right? And how well they're doing. that really becomes a bigger mission as you grow.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I want to ask you about hiring, right?
Mhm.
It's a challenging world for talent, right? There's a
Yeah.
lot of competition for talent. And we know what people say, right? You got to be willing to pay, pay the best to get the best. I was talking with some attorneys in New Jersey a couple weeks ago, and they were talking about this challenge. And one of them said he had hired an associate attorney, and the first day of work, the guy is fresh out of law school. He pulls up in a Lamborghini, and he's like, "Uh-oh, this is going to be a problem." And I think it's just the pool of maybe where they're looking for candidates. From a lot of times we assume we need candidates from the best schools, but that may not be the case. They were bemoaning maybe a culture of entitlement, perhaps that we're seeing amongst younger folks. I don't
Mhm.
really see that myself. I mean, sure, there are some people that are in that situation, but I've always had a good experience hiring people. What are some of the key things that you really look for? What are the big drivers that someone's going to be successful?
It's really interesting. It's a very timely question for us. We're actually hiring an attorney right now, a senior attorney. Let me start with, so I think the key indicator is what we're looking for. Let me just start by saying has gotten so much easier. One of the many benefits of having a larger firm with Inc. 5000, Law Firm 500 recognition. More importantly for me, great place to work. 100% of the people who responded said Tenant Law Group is a great place to work.
Yeah,
Pretty good. As an employer in 2025, you also got to keep your eye on Glassdoor. You're going to have people who've exited who are just, but for the
sure.
most part, we've got pretty good, feedback on Glassdoor as well too. So that really helps. Now, going to your question about what are we looking for when we're recruiting. So let me just maybe by way of story, let me share with you. I thought for the longest time as a plaintiff's firm, what we need trial attorneys. Like we got attorneys who are going to be ready to go.
Yeah.
So I would say for the last couple of years, we've really focused on hiring people looking to transition or who have had some background as prosecutors or public defenders. Criminal law, they've done lots of trials.
Okay.
And we've had success. We have two team members, super valuable team members who that's where they started their careers. And it's just worked out well. And we've had other team members where it didn't work out so well. And what I realized is that I think what we're going for is we always need to have someone on our team with that experience. But, I think a day to day, what I'm really looking for. So on ZipRecruiter, you can have it be a deal breaker question. I had as a deal breaker question, first chair, administrative, criminal, or civil trial experience. And if the answer is no, I've never done it, then you're not being considered. I changed that this time around. And what I've realized is what I need is, as a plaintiff's attorney, it's not about the litigation, it's about the outcome. It's about the resolution. Not the litigation, it's about the resolution. That's been my mantra. So I need negotiators. I want someone. So now my deal breaker question is, do you have experience negotiating a civil settlement of X? That's the deal breaker. Because if it's a no, I'm not going to have you train here. I want to slot you in because where we're at and where we're headed, we need just to take people who know what they're doing and hitting the ground running. And one thing that I've observed and that I've been guilty of myself is, for some reason, the natural instinct of all lawyers who are hiring their first attorney is, I want to hire someone who's going to be my protege. And I'm going to have more experience than them. They're going to be I'm going to hire them right out of law school. And it's admirable and it's fine. But where I'm at for my firm right now, we're not hiring people out of law school. And when I'm a huge booster of my alma mater, UC Davis School of Law, but I don't make a pitch to come work at my firm right out of law school. I don't have a place for you. Honestly, I want seasoned attorneys that can come in and make a difference and hit the ground running. But I want to be on their radar because they will be seasoned attorneys soon. And not to say there's nothing and I'm always available as a mentor to them, but it's a realization that's taken years to sort of, come to accept. Where we're hiring, we want to lateral in professionals rather than have this be a first position for most people.
I think there's a lot of wisdom there because law school doesn't teach you all the skills that you need. The real world teaches you a lot of that. And that experience can be so valuable. Have you found that there's a sweet spot of experience? Because sometimes people with too much experience might be difficult. What's the sweet spot for you?
Such a great question. I had one attorney who was really successful here. We're really sad he's going to be moving on after 6 years with us. And he started as a first year. I think he'd been licensed only a year or two.
Okay.
So it's been just such a pleasure working with this attorney and I would say shepherding. Maybe that's not giving him enough credit, but basically being, watching him excel and grow and become the amazing attorney he is now. And we've also lateraled in, our most recent hire was a general counsel and managing attorney with over 35 years of experience. Mm-hmm. And so I think it really just depends on the person. I will say as a threshold, someone who's probably within their first 5 years should have some really solid experience in civil to make them, I think, a contender for a new open position in our firm. So I would kind of put that. I don't really have a limit on the upper end, but I will say that along with that deal breaker question, the kinds of things that really interest me now, and I actually was interviewing an attorney candidate yesterday and asking these questions. Tell me about how you deal with email. Tell me about how you use a digital calendar. We're remote, so we have limited tools about, first of all, we now have admins who are first screeners for emails for attorneys. So if you haven't ever had an admin screen your email, it's non-negotiable. It's part of the package. I don't want people spending their time getting their inbox down to zero. There's no benefit. There's no tangible benefit to a client to making that happen. We have admins that can help with that. How do you manage your calendar? Are you the kind of person that sits down on a Sunday, writes down everything they want to accomplish, puts a time next to it, and then slots that into their calendar to actually get it done? Mm-hmm. That's what I do. That's one of the things that I now do every week, and that's non-negotiable. And I want people to be successful here. And so I don't want to be too heavy-handed, but I want to look on that calendar. And if I see open time, that means you're not working or available. I'm setting a meeting with you. If you come back and say, I have a conflict, why aren't you putting this in your calendar? What's wrong? But I'm not even waiting that long anymore. I'm trying to get out in front of that. But if you're not the kind of person who knows how to leverage your time and use your calendar, that's everything in a planner's firm. I'm trying to think of one other question that was kind of critical. So for example, a candidate who has a career as a solo, you got to let some of these things go. The same challenge that I faced, I was in your shoes once. You got to be able to work with a paralegal and delegate. You got to be able to work with a case manager. And oh, by the way, how comfortable are you about using the tools that we use internally involving AI, utilizing our templates, our work product, and using some tools that other firms, I don't think many other firms aren't using yet, because that's how we're operating here. And so you'll have to be comfortable adapting to our system. And, we had a time in the not so distant past where some of the struggles that we were facing really just boiled down to, we had different pods internally that were running like their own firms. They weren't using our systems. They weren't using standard protocols. They weren't using our templates. And guess what kind of results we were getting? Mm-hmm. All over the place. So we're really, attorneys at Tenant Law Group are going to have the opportunity to make their mark known. We're not going to tell them how to negotiate, how to communicate with the other side. But we do have we have a system that works, that has a track record of success. Use this, you will hit your goals, and it's going to work out really well for you, for your client, for the firm, for all involved. So sorry, a little bit of a long answer. Hopefully
that's good. That's good to know. And I like that, that approach, highlighting some of those softer skills. The word that comes to mind for me is execution. Mm-hmm. People that are, have a drive to get things done and can execute. You might be a great thinker, you might be very knowledgeable, but can you get the work done, and can you do it? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Attorneys who have a lot of, I like to see people who've stayed for a long time. That used to be something that didn't matter as much when I was hiring. Mm-hmm. Oh, this is a great candidate. And okay, they've been a year here, a year here, a year here, a year here. But we're, as long as they're here for a couple of years, at this point, I want people to come here and buy into the vision that we have, that I'm presenting to them. This is where I'm taking this firm. I would love for you to be on this journey with me. And I think that has been more helpful than anything else in terms of recruiting great talent, because people might be like, okay, well, this is XYZ law firm and we celebrate, blah, blah, blah. It's the same. I saw a website one time a few years ago, and it was generic big law firm. And it had it was, I don't know if you ever saw that. And I was like, yes, they all look exactly the same. Well, let me tell you about what we do that no one else is doing right now. We're doing these things. This is where I'm taking this. This is what it means for the firm. This is what it means for you. This is what it means for our clients. This is the difference we're going to make. It gets me excited. I share with them my BHAG.
Let me
So
ask you about that.
yeah,
What does that look like? That vision? You don't have to give us the specifics, but generally, and then how do you develop it, and how do you create? How are you communicating that with the team?
it's a great question. So in January, I think it was last January. No, it started in 2023. We adopted scaling up as sort of
Ah,
our template. Some folks use EOS. We used scaling up.
yep,
And so we've been adopting and implementing the Rockefeller habits. And one of those is
love it.
you need to have a BHAG, right? Your big, hairy, audacious goal. This is something that 10 to 25 years out, you have absolutely no idea how you're going to get there now, but
Yeah,
it's sort of coloring the decisions you make today to be able to hit that scale. So for us, I'm at help out 100,000 tenants a year. That's part of my BHAG, and make services available to half the U.S. population. That's 8 states. You got one
yeah.
down,
Okay, there you
right?
go.
So I'm 12.5% of the
Yeah,
50% there by covering California. New York would get us further along as well too. So I don't know, but those are our BHAGs. So people get excited. They know that there's a vision, that this is part. This isn't just about like, we're just gonna, I don't know, we'll see what happens tomorrow. No, everything is done with intention. Something that's been really helpful for the communication aspect of it is I, before you adopting scaling up, I implemented a state of the firm presentation that I deliver quarterly.
okay,
So the purpose of the January, and I do them in January, April, July, and October, and they're held the second Wednesday after the conclusion of the first quarter or of the quarter. And it's a 90-day look back. Here's where we are.
yeah,
And over time, I've become more and more transparent. I found that transparency on every front is just, it really helps build trust and buy-in. And
yep,
then in 90 days, this is now what we're focusing on. We come up with a theme every quarter and like a few projects that the executive team is working on implementing, and see how that fits in with the greater vision of where we're headed. And sometimes those change. Like I come into a year with,
yeah.
this is what I think our focus is, and you just got to be nimble as a business owner, because sometimes there are opportunities that arise that you need to jump on in order to stay ahead of the curve. So
Yeah.
that's generally how I approach it.
That's so cool. I love Vern Harnish's work. What are some of your other like favorite things from that from his books, either from Scaling Up or from Rockefeller Habits, that you've implemented in your practice?
Um, Forcing the management leadership team to quantify every single position in the firm, giving them what we
Mm,
call our critical number. You have a
yeah,
critical number you're responsible for. And the exercise of doing that was really helpful. And I got to tell you, I still haven't figured it out for a couple positions. Like, what's the
yeah,
critical number for an executive assistant? Is it number of emails in the person they're supporting inbox? I've gone with that. Yes, it's hours saved. How do you manage that? How do you measure that? How do you measure
Mm,
hours saved? I mean, it's got to be something that's, measurable and actually trackable too.
yeah,
So so that exercise has been helpful. And that's also been one of the hardest to implement, because as a firm that constantly evolves and positions change, um, you know, critical numbers change, and that
yeah.
has a whole effect of downward effect that requires some additional work. But to your point, like, what have I found, in terms of drawing from scaling up that's been helpful? I think the critical number has been very helpful. Going through and just establishing what are our brand promises, what
Hmm.
are our firm values, and having those things act as sort of a constitution for us. Like all the decisions will stem from that. For
Yeah.
example, our core purpose, right? Hadn't really
Hmm.
thought about it. I had a magic statement. That's something I created in How to Manage from the beginning. But when we first adopted scaling up, what's our core purpose? Our core
Yeah.
purpose is to improve the lives of California renters. That's our core purpose. Just make their lives better.
Hmm.
Um, because it's one thing to say, we'll get you a financial recovery. And the other thing is, and that's just, I mean, that'll get them part of the way. But if you're dealing with someone who has never dealt with the sum of money before, and they're not aware of how to leverage that to their longer term benefit, there are always opportunities there. I don't think many plaintiffs
Yeah.
lawyers, I don't think, spend a lot of time on what happens to the client after they get their settlement or judgment. But I think it's something that I want to think about, because that's our core purpose, is not just getting them money, it's improving their lives. So
Yeah. I love that purpose statement because it's bigger than the legal work, it opens you up to so much more that you can do. And it ties in value too. It's not just, we're not just in it for the money. Like there's more to it here. We want to improve their lives, and there's so much you can do with that. That's a really cool statement. I love that.
Thank you.
KPIs are kind of all the rage. We're talking about critical numbers as a part of that as well. Mm-hmm. There's so much misunderstanding about KPIs out there. When did you first start tracking KPIs, and what are like your top 3 to 4 that you feel like every law firm owner needs to have at the ready?
When should I have started implementing KPIs from day one? When did I actually start really like focusing on them? I think fairly early on, but beyond them just being a notation at the end of a job description that wasn't like tracked and measured and holding people accountable on a regular basis. I think that's something that's become a lot more, we've been a lot more effective at, measuring and tracking KPIs. I think since we adopted the scaling up platform, but no, we've been tracking KPIs for a few years now. And then again, to be clear, 2016, we're on year 9 right now. So I would say for the first 5, probably not that well. And the last 4 have been a lot better. For a plaintiff's firm, it depends on the position, of course. I'll give you the it depends answer. But I would say for lawyers, for example, if you're in a defense firm, it's pretty easy. When I was an associate, it was just your billable hour. That was your KPI, basically, right? I mean, do good work, do ethical work, and meet your billables. Okay, all right. So what is it in a plaintiff's firm? And this is really challenging for people coming from a defense firm background, or even a government, working as a DA or a public defender, where they're just, their performance might be tied to, or success might be tied to the number of cases that they can get through. And that's not the purpose in a plaintiff's firm. Yes, it's the outcomes that matter, but it's the outcomes we've determined. So I think a little bit of foundational explanation here. We created a term that we call EGS, and that's an EGS value. And EGS is an estimated gross settlement value. And we determined that at the outset using a proprietary calculator that that has evolved over years of practice and has been informed by outcomes. So we have a pretty good sense, based on some data points that come in, what we can do with this case. That is also informed by available collectability, insurance policies, et cetera, which we're also investigating at the outset. So we have an EGS. We present a matter to a team member, to a client, to an attorney, and say, here's your matter. Here's a new matter. Here's the EGS. And so one of the KPIs for us is you've got to resolve this matter within 90% of EGS. We'll give you all the tools you need. We'll give you the support staff. We'll give you the templates. We'll give you the protocols. We'll give you the matters. We'll give you everything. And we'll even show, but you have to, track, report back, and this is your target. And I want you to resolve, if you're, one of our litigation attorneys, probably with the tools we're adopting now, closer to 2 a month, 2 resolutions a month, right?
Okay.
Which are pretty easily to track for our litigation matters. Those correspond fairly accurately with trial dates. If the case is going to go to trial or it's going to settle around the date of trial. So those are fairly easy to predict. And, a lot of people say, it's so hard, running a plaintiff's firm. You don't know when the case is going to sell. You don't know how much. I mean, but that's what data is for, right? I mean, you figure out averages and you can make some educated guesses, and you focus on tweaking the variables to make that output a little higher. And so that's what I really tried to do over time.
That's so cool. I love it. Some great KPI ideas in there, just making it a lot more scientific and measurable. Fantastic. So Eric, unfortunately we're coming down to the end of our time, but it's been such a fantastic conversation with you. You joined the book club, which is really exciting, and we're excited to see you in there. But I do want to ask, so you see our book we're reading right now, which is The Psychology of Money. Are there any other books that you're reading right now that you are finding just really great, or maybe a previous favorite of yours?
It's a great question. We have an internal book club here too. I'm drawing a blank on the one right now, the author's name, but it's one I'm reading right now. But the first couple weeks of January, I read 2 Dan Sullivan books that I love. Dan Sullivan, and Strategic Coach is fantastic. And I think it's Hardy is his co-author, Dr. Hardy. So 10x is easier than 2x. Mm-hmm. Loved it. Just blew my mind. focus on the 20%, just jettison the 80%. And that has been like my motivating factor for a lot of like what I'm doing now. This is exactly by design what I was trying to do in terms of focusing on that 20%. So I like that. And I also, what was the other, Dan Sullivan, Who Not How. Love it.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Yeah.
So those are two that I love that I've read recently.
Fantastic recommendations. Yeah, I love 10x is easier than 2x. I mean, you get the concept from the title, but you really got to read it to get the impact from it. The way that they deliver it and the stories that they tell it just really will help you just shift your mindset basically from an incremental growth strategy to more exponential, essentially, and thinking bigger in terms of systems and structure that you need to create. That one will change your life. Yeah.
Oh, for sure. Can I share a funny little, very brief anecdote
please.
with you? I got a text from another law firm owner who I'm friends with, and she's like, Eric, you have to enter this prompt into ChatGPT. And the prompt was, I don't know if you heard, if this is something that's like circulating. That anyway, it basically says, you're instructing ChatGPT. You are a multi-billionaire like founder. You are no holds barred. You are brutally honest, and you need to get your student, basically your member that you're coaching, to this level. And it was funny. And I copied and pasted. This was literally yesterday. I did this. And some of the advice, I didn't even ask for anything. He's like, all right, this is your homework. This is what you have to do. You have to identify that 20% and you have to focus on that and eliminate the 80. I was like, okay, Dan Sullivan was really hitting on something there. If this is what the genius of ChatGPT is focusing on, and I think there's something to it. So it was just kind of a funny reflection of that, that thesis,
right.
taking shape in ChatGPT. So.
For sure. Absolutely. Well, Eric, where can our listeners go to find you if they want to learn more about you?
So if listeners are just interested in more of my philosophy, I would say LinkedIn. I'm Eric Toscano is my LinkedIn handle. And for more on Tenant Law Group, tenantlawgroupsf.com is our URL. So come visit our website. And best ways to reach me.
Well, thanks for joining us, Eric.
Thank you. Much appreciated.
If you want to connect with Eric, you can find him on LinkedIn or visit tenantlawgroupsf.com. We've got all his links in the show notes, so be sure to check those out. What did we learn today? Scaling isn't about working harder. It's about hiring smarter, data and metrics, and communicating a strong vision. If you don't have a clear BHAG, big, hairy, audacious goal for your firm, now's the time to define it. I love that Eric is using Verne Harnish's scaling up framework to grow and manage his rapidly expanding practice. And here at the Lawyer Millionaire, we teach Verne Harnish's methods along with others like EOS, and we've incorporated these various approaches into our simple one-page business plan philosophy. Want similar growth results? Jump on a call with me and I'll share with you my one-page strategic business plan template for law firms. It's the same framework I use with my clients to help them scale profitably and build real wealth. Also, leave us a review if you got value from today's episode. It helps more law firm owners discover our show. And finally, join our free book club for law firm owners and start learning the strategies that take firms from stuck to scalable. Well, that's a wrap for this episode of The Lawyer Millionaire. Seize the moment, take action, and create the life you deserve. See you next time.